regions of skin, layers of epidermis, layers of dermis, the receptors that we find in it, connective tissues, hair, nails, and glands. Lots of things in skin. It's a really complex organ. What happens when you have damage to it? A bit of chatter. Everything good? Any questions? So, most of us have probably been sunburned, unless you're really good with putting sunscreen on and cover yourself up. Well, you can burn yourself from more than just by the sun. You can burn yourself from the sun, you can burn yourself from hot things. There's several ways to burn yourself. We've given degrees to name these burns just to show the degree of damage, to classify the degree of damage, and you would treat these different levels of damage differently. They're named these degrees based on how deep the damage is. So first degree is the least damaging. First degree sunburns, or burns in general, I shouldn't say sunburns, skin burns. First degree skin burns only go as far as the epidermis. Your skin gets redder because blood vessels are opening up and you can see more blood rushing through your skin. Just like if you get flush or if you're blushing, your skin gets redder. Your skin can get redder here for the same reason your blood vessels opening up, but it's because it's responding to damage. I don't know if anyone's in physiology right now, or you'll take it later. You'll learn about how vasodilation is a response to skin damage. Your skin gets really sensitive because it's your body telling you that this area is damaged and needs to heal. You need to protect it. So it's sensitive and red. You do have nerve endings there. We talked about Merkel cells. We talked about myosinus corpuscles. There's also pain receptors, and we haven't really discussed that, but they're there. And so that's why this is a painful burn. So we're only getting to the epidermis of this. Could be from sun, could be from touching something hot. Second degree. Second degree, this is if we have damage down into the dermis. So it could be just the papillary layer, or it could go down to the reticular layer. We're getting into the connective tissue of the skin, either the papillary layer, areolar connective tissue, or deeper down to the dense irregular connective tissue of the reticular layer. Because we're damaging below the epidermis, I didn't really highlight this last time, so I'm going to highlight it now. So let's say here's the epidermis. And then here's the dermis. I briefly mentioned this before, but I'm going to reiterate it here again. There's a thin layer called the basement membrane that separates. It's not a layer of cells, it's a layer of proteins and fluid. It's not cells. There's a thin layer called the basement membrane that normally separates the epidermis and dermis. It's not cells, it's proteins and fluid. It serves as an attachment point the cells up here attached to the connective tissue down here. Yes.
So that's below the stratum basale and above the
Yeah,
areola?
it's deep to stratum basale. It's superficial to the papillary layer. It's in between. It's the border. Normally, what this layer does is it provides attachment. Does anyone remember the name of the protein that allows for attachment between cells? Desmosomes. Specifically, it's attaching downwards like this, to the basal part. There's another prefix that went in front of desmosomes. Hemidesmosomes. There are hemidesmosomes attaching the stratum basale to the connective tissue, to the basement membrane. Hemidesmosomes. Right, so you have this place of attachment. That's what function of the basement membrane. Another function of the basement membrane is to prevent fluid, any interstitial fluid that's here in the dermis, to leak through, or anything on the outside, your skin, to easily leak through. We don't want to easily or readily absorb things in our environment. Say we touch something harmful, we don't want it to just get straight into our bloodstream. We don't want bacteria to get straight into our bloodstream. That would be really bad. So we have this barrier, the basement membrane, to limit what fluid can get through. In a second-degree burn, this basement membrane gets damaged because it's getting damaged deeper below the dermis, or deep into the dermis. Because there's damage here, now fluid in the connective tissue can get through up to the epidermis. But because of its cellularity, because these cells in the epidermis are linked together, they stay linked together, and we get this to bubble up. And so now all of this is filled with fluid. What's this called? This is a blister. Because of the cellularity of the blister, cellularity of the epidermis, you have the bubble form, and because the basement membrane is broken, liquid goes into that area. So this is all pushed up. And it's going to die because now it's not getting the nutrients that it needs. Yes?
So what about if you, like, for example, are wearing tight shoes and it keeps rubbing up against your heel and you get a blister that way?
Yeah, so what if you're wearing a tight shoe and any friction that leads to a blister? Same idea. Just one's caused by sun or heat damage, one's caused by friction damage. You're damaging the basement membrane with some. Same thing. Same thing over. So one common feature of second-degree burns is blistering. You don't see that in first degree. Also painful. Third degree. Third-degree burns. Yeah, it's not a fun picture to look at. Third-degree burns are really bad. We're just going over 3. Sometimes people classify 4 or worse. We'll say that anything that's third degree is below, down to the hypodermis, or farther. Could be the muscle, it could be the bone. So really bad burns. If your burn is this bad, it'll appear charred. You're damaging all those accessory organs. You're damaging all the glands, sebaceous, sudoriferous, all the nerves there. So because you're damaging the nerves there, you don't feel pain in that area where there's that degree burn. You don't feel pain, but it's not good because look at the damage. It's really, really bad. Burns like this, you would need a skin graft. You need to take healthy skin from somewhere else in your body, or even a donor, to replace the skin that was damaged, because this skin won't replace itself. You've removed all the basal cells, the keratinocytes from the stratum basale that are in pigmentosis. You've removed the fibroblasts that are in there that could replace. Yeah, you need a skin graft. Chin, 1, 2, yeah.
For burns that bad, would it be better to do an amputation or a skin graft?
Would it be better to do amputation or skin graft for this, shown here? You could use it, I know it looks bad, but you could do a skin graft. It's not gonna look the same as before, but you can at least get a protective covering. Yeah, this is bad, but it still can be patched up with a skin graft. And you can survive it. Obviously you're gonna have different functionality here. It's gonna be very different. Another question, Brenda?
So for this skin graft, like what layers is it? Because if this is damaging to the dermis, then you're gonna have dermis.
Right. So what layers, what is a skin graft and what layers would you have to replace? I'm hoping the people who are doing that project are gonna answer that, but briefly, if you're having a skin graft, you at least have to replace down to the dermis because those cells are gone, those tissues are gone. So you have to take skin and grow that.
So if they're taking it out.
Oh, I see. So if you're taking it from the depth that you'd be taking, you'd at least be taking the living, some of the living cells in certain areas, like stratum basale. You know what? I don't know off the top of my head what other cells you'd have to take. So let's wait for skin graft people to get to that. Yeah, skin grafts don't seem fun. I've seen the tools that are used. Yeah, it doesn't want to be fun.
So would frostbite also affect like that lower level?
Frostbite. Would frostbite affect that lower level? I guess it depends on the severity of frostbite. I'm sure there's different severities. And really bad frostbite will go really deep and then you can have amputation or something like that. Yes?
Is it possible to grow skin in like a petri dish?
Is it possible to grow skin in a petri dish? It is. I don't know how effective it is in terms of, there's a lot of, it's not as simple as taking skin from one place and putting it on someone. It has to match. And that's a whole other discussion for when you get to immunology in your physiology classes. So it can be grown. It can even be like at least partially taken from other species like in the meantime. Like I know that there's one procedure where you take fish skin, irradiated fish skin, and cover a burn to help it heal. But that's a temporary thing. It's not like a permanent fix. So yes, but it's complicated. Yes.
Could you also use like stem cells?
Could you also use stem cells? Hypothetically, yes. Again, complications there. It's not. You can't just like throw stem cells in something and expect it to grow exactly as you want it to. You have to treat it in a certain way to make it differentiate and grow the way you want it to. So that's also complicated, but hypothetically, yes. And of course, there's research going to both things, growing a dish and stem cells.
So in a third degree burn, it says that most of the accessory organs are damaged. That's like the nerve endings, the glands, is that blood vessels?
When I say accessory organs?
Yeah.
When I say accessory organs, what do I mean? I mean blood vessels, nerves, sweat glands, sebaceous glands, all that's damaged. All right, graft. Cool. Good questions. Any more? Yes, Graham.
Can you take stem cells from the different species?
Can you take stem cells from different species? Probably not. Not unless you have some really advanced genetic manipulation. Probably, if you want something to work with a specific species, you generally need to work with that species. Generally, I've seen like mice with human ears growing off their backs. So yeah, you can do a lot of crazy things with genetics. I don't know if you can like actually use that to attach it to someone, but that's what they're trying. Trying to see if you can grow parts on other animals and then use it. More questions? All right. Vitiligo. Vitiligo is a condition. So we're done with burns. There's three categories of burns. Vitiligo is a loss of pigment. This is because melanocytes are dying. There could be several reasons why melanocytes might die. Could be a genetic problem, could be an allergy. Either way, regardless of why it's happening, the main cause is those cells are dying. What layer are those found in? basale, stratobasale. So these cells in stratobasale are dying for whatever reason in a specific part of your body. So it might not be all over your body, it just might be in certain parts. What kind of precautions would people like this have to take? Protect their skin. Protect their skin from sun exposure. Or sunblock to cover the area, because otherwise you'll get skin damage. Sorry? No. I mean, what I mean is this isn't necessarily caused by sun. This is, if you have this condition, if you have heat pigmentation, you don't want to expose yourself too long to sun, because then your skin cells will get damaged. They don't have the protection of melanin. Yes.
So the melanocytes, they like don't undergo mitosis, right? So like, what would you say?
Melanocytes can undergo mitosis.
So, but they're only in the stratobasale.
They're only in stratobasale.
Okay.
They have these long processes that can extend their melanin to the upper layers.
Okay.
So they can send melanin, the protein, to the upper layers, but the melanocytes stay in stratobasale. Yeah, that's vitiligo. Still, you can have a normal life with this, except protect yourself from the sun. Yes.
Have we talked about, or are we gonna talk about scars at all?
Have we talked about scars? What I want you to know about scars, we haven't really discussed scars. What I want you to know about scars is if you have a scar, you're damaging down to the connective tissue down to the dermis. So what tissue would you have to replace? Down to the dermis, so what tissue? It's specific tissue. Dense, irregular, and areolar. What cells would be needed to make those fibers? Fibroblasts would be needed to make those fibers. So you need those cells to migrate to the region, make new fibers, and fill in the gap. And the reason why scars look different from the rest of your skin, they don't have hair, they don't have pigmentation usually, because now the epidermis, the part that's been cut, say it's been cut, there's basically no epidermis there. It's just all collagen and fibers filled in that spot. Yes?
So if you have excessive sun exposure throughout your life, and like say you got some secondary sunburn, or like, and could that kill melanocytes? Is that why you get like those white pigments?
Yeah, could continued exposure to sun, could sun damage cause depigmentation? Absolutely. Sun damage, since it's going down, especially second degree burns, go down to below stratobasale, you're damaging melanocytes for sure. That can lead to those white spots that can happen to people. Yeah, be careful what you do with the sun. Hurt your skin, yes.
What is it called when someone is like allergic to like the sun?
What's it called when someone's allergic to the sun? I don't know the name off the top of my head. I do know what you're talking about. That's different. That's different.
No, I know. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I don't know the name off the top of my head. Anyone know the name for the sun allergy? It's a real thing, yeah. I think. Wait, is it?
No, it is.
Or is that a psychosomatic thing and we're not sure what the cause is? Y'all watch,
I know
oh, we know it's something else. You know something like that? I'm thinking of something else. Sun allergy? Okay. A more extreme version, where you have depigmentation everywhere, that's what albinism is. Albinism is a complete loss of pigment because there's a mutation in the melanocytes. So these people still have melanocytes, they're just not producing melanin. So vitiligo is melanocytes are getting destroyed. Albinism is where you have melanocytes, but you're not producing the protein properly. There's something changed in the DNA. There's a mutation. Mutation means a change in the DNA. So that affects your skin, affects your hair, even affects your eyes. And so people with this condition have to be really careful with the sun, with lighting, because you don't have that pigment to protect you from radiation or even bright light for your eyes. That can be harmful. Yes? Vitiligo? Or not vitiligo, albinism? Albinism is a complete loss of pigment because melanocytes have mutations that prevent them from producing melanin. So they're not producing melanin. They have melanocytes, they're just not producing melanin. So complications can arise on this can exposure yourself to the sun. Yes?
And the opposite thing like albinism, like a dark.
Is there a dark version of that? Overpigmentation? I mean, I guess you have like concentrated overpigmentation like in the case of moles, but I've never heard of a case where someone's just like, I've never heard that as an issue. But I mean, you have moles and things that are concentrated pigment. Question. Okay. Last topic. So we've gone over albinism, we've gone over vitiligo. Last topic for skin and integument is types of skin cancer. There are several types of skin cancer. I'm only going to go over three. Just the three major ones, the most common ones. So these are the ones I want you to know. Cancer is not like other illnesses where you get a virus. Well, most of them, some of them you actually get. Where you like get a cold or you get an infection. It's not like that. You don't necessarily catch it from someone else, though HPV you can. It's because mitosis is dysregulated. Normally mitosis should happen for what, two reasons? What's one reason? Normal growth and development and replacing damaged cells. Those are the two reasons why mitosis should happen. If mitosis happens when those things aren't needed, that can lead to things. That is what cancer is, an unregulated production of cells. So these cells continue to grow and grow and grow, and now there's nothing to regulate them, and they can invade other areas of your body, and they can mess things up. Think of it as overpopulation for your body. You don't need overpopulation, that's damaging. It takes up too many resources and interferes with activities. That's the gist of what cancer is in general. So skin cancer is where cells in the skin are overpopulating more than needed and causing problems. That's a great question. How can you prevent it? Sometimes it just happens randomly. And that just sucks when that happens. It's just there's no real cause. It's just a sporadic mutation. Mutations can happen randomly. Most skin cancer is caused by sun exposure. Most skin cancer is caused by sun exposure. That we can prevent. So limiting your time in the sun, covering yourself, putting on sunscreen. I don't care what color your skin is. We can all get skin cancer, so you should protect yourself. But it's definitely more common than so yeah, so that's what you can do to prevent it. But some causes are just you can't do anything about. The three major types are basal cell. I should have kept that diagram. Basal cell carcinoma. So if this is your epidermis, here's your dermis. This is your epidermis and here's your dermis. Here's the basal layer. Basal cell carcinoma, this is stratum basale. As the name implies, this is a cancer growing in stratum basale. So cells here in stratum basale multiply more than needed. This form of cancer is slow growing, and because it's slow growing, it's less deadly because you can catch it. The real danger is if these cells grow so fast that they make it to, say, your bloodstream and then travel around somewhere else and start a new growth, start a new tumor. That's can be really bad because you've got a large cluster of cells here. Here's basal cell carcinoma. You've got a large group of cells here that are growing up. They're all self-contained. You could cut this out and remove it and then be fine. Just what people do often. If these cells make their way to the bloodstream and then travel somewhere else, now you have a tumor growing in this region, and then another tumor in this region, and then another tumor in this region. And then how are you supposed to catch them all? That's why you do things like chemo. Chemotherapy goes through the entire body and tries to kill all of these cells.
The skin cancer is not connected to the body cancer. It can bleed.
Yeah, to repeat that, skin cancer is for just skin, but it can lead to tumors in different areas if it progresses. And that's true for any type of cancer.
What's the term for that? I forget.
I'll get to that in a second. What's the term for when it spreads? Does anyone know? Metastasize. Yeah, there you go. Metastasize. So this would appear as like a shiny bump on your skin. If you have any growths on your skin, in general, you should always get it checked out. Ones that weren't there before, especially if they're growing rapidly. They change rapidly. Oh, it's right there. Metastasize. So it doesn't metastasize much. So that's why this one, if you catch it, it's generally treatable. Basal cell carcinoma. Second type is squamous cell. Squamous cell starts a little higher up. Starts in stratum spinosum. So basale starts in stratum basale, or basal cell starts in stratum basale. Squamous cell starts in stratum spinosum. So it starts a little higher up. Still goes invisible from the surface of the skin. It's keratinocytes that are growing too fast. It has potential to metastasize. So it grows a little faster, meaning it not only grows up, it might grow down a little bit. It could grow down and then make its way to the bloodstream and then spread to other areas. Third type, which is the most deadly of these three, is melanoma. Melanoma is a mutation of cancer of melanocytes, which are also found in stratum basale. But the difference is that these grow faster. So if you have a melanoma, this grows rapidly, and it appears pigmented because it's a melanocyte, a cancer of melanocytes. Because it's growing so rapidly, it's growing in both directions, superficially and deep, and it has higher potential of making its way to a blood vessel or a lymph vessel, which means they can spread to other areas. Again, the word for that is metastasis. You do not want a cancer to metastasize. That's bad. It's much harder to treat, which is why you want to catch cancers, whatever it is, earlier on. If they're localized in one area, they're easy to treat, they're easy to remove or treat and deal with some way. But if they spread, it's really hard to deal with. So melanomas grow fast and more likely make their way to the bloodstream and metastasize to the health.
Out of the three, which ones are benign or which ones aren't?
Out of the three, which ones are benign or which ones are malignant? But benign means it's a growth, but it's not spreading. Malignant means it's spreading. It depends. This one here is most likely to be malignant. This one, basal cell, is most likely to be benign. But even benign tumors can become malignant. We just don't know what the trigger is sometimes when it switches over. So which is why if you find this, you still want to take it out. Yes?
So is melanoma right below the membrane?
Melanoma, it starts in basal, in the stratum basale. It can push down into the dermis and make its way to the bloodstream. It has that potential. It starts in the stratum basale, just like basal cell, but it grows faster, so it grows in all the directions. Is there another question?
When so say you have a melanoma on your shoulder and you go and you get it taken off and then they say the margins are clear, what does the margins are clear mean? Like what layer did they go to?
If you're talking about margins, you're probably talking about the border, I guess.
Okay.
I'm not going to test you on this. This is just, public health announcement, really. If you want to, if you're getting paranoid, if you have skin cancer or something, look for these signs. If by margin they mean border, you want to see if the border of that growth, whatever it is symmetrical or asymmetrical. If
Okay,
it's
so they
asymmetrical,
don't test if it's like not gotten to the bloodstream.
how can you test this down the bloodstream?
Yeah,
You
I
have
guess
to,
that's what I'm wondering.
I don't know how you test that. I mean, you can definitely biopsy, you can take it out and,
Yeah.
and see how deep it's gone.
Okay.
That's the only way that I could imagine it being done easily.
Because they would be able to see if, like, in the biopsy, if it had gotten into
Yeah,
the,
a biopsy is a removal of tissue, so if you remove whatever has been growing on your skin and you take a look at it, you can see what type of cells is it. Is it just the epidermis, or are there dermal cells involved too? So that, I feel like that'd be the simplest way to do it. I don't know for sure, but that would make sense. Oh, right. Check for asymmetry, check the border. Is it clear or is it irregular? Check the color. If it's an uneven color, it might not just be a regular mole. Diameter, if it's a large one and if it's growing fast, if it's evolving, if it's growing fast, then definitely you gotta check that. Sooner the better. I've got a ton of moles, so I was gonna take pictures of mine and see if they change over time. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Take a moment. Raise your hand a few more time. Hands on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hit letter. 1, 2, 3. Right. Hair matrix. That's the only place where you have hair growth. What region of the hair would you say it is in terms of like the longitudinal sections? The bulb. Not the. It's in the bulb, not the root, not the shaft. It's in the bulb. Bottom part, just above the. The matrix is right here in the bulb, above the dermal papilla, or hair papilla. Raise your hand a few more times. Hands on 3. 1, 2, 3. 3, say letter. 1, 2, 3. C. Right. I did this. It was terrible. It's a really good nap though. Yeah, you get blisters, down to dermis. All right. Can you all recognize all these different things now? Take a second. Could we? Take like 3 minutes. Answer as many as you can. Is that how you do it? By the way, is this too dark? I'm going to keep it this dark just for now, but is this too dark? You feel like it's better? We'll try this out and see what happens. see what we can figure out in the next 2-3 minutes. So let's look at A. Here's the hair follicle, and there's this thing extending from it. What is that? Erector pili. Erector pili. P-I-L-I. 1L. B, or is B? B. Again, another hair follicle, and this big gland extending off of it. Sebaceous gland. What's the mode of secretion? Holocrine, bursting, yeah. You should know the name too. Holocrine, where the cells burst. It's very oily. C. The arrow is kind of pointing to, it could be pointing one, I would take more than one answer here because I'm not being very clear. If we're talking about the connective tissue, what's the name of the connective tissue? The region of connective tissue. The hair papilla. If you said the connective tissue, it's the hair papilla. If we're talking about the hair, though, matrix. So if you said hair papilla or matrix, those are.
What about hair bulb?
Sorry?
Hair bulb?
Bulb? Bulb, I guess, could work too, but I would point to this whole thing. If I said bulb, I would be pointing to all of this, not just a specific part. So matrix is the actual part of the hair. Papilla is the connective tissue deep to it. It's holding it down and giving it nutrients. What's this? It's got a bunch of circular acinium. Acinium corpuscle for detecting deep touch pressure. E. It's cut here. It's got this tube, this duct that goes to the skin. It's pretty big. This is apocrine because the next one is acrine. Apocrine and acrine. G, I can point to one or two things, I guess. G and H. So let's just point at everything here. What's the red thing? That's a Meissner's corpuscle. What's this region called in general? That's a dermal papilla. And then this layer, the dark layer here? Stratomesalli. So Meissner's corpuscle, I honestly don't know which one I was pointing to, but all over here. If you're referring to the red one, it's Meissner's corpuscle. If you're referring to the hump in general, that's the dermal papilla. And then the dark, or whatever color of cells these are, that's stratomesalli. Yes.
So you would match like a basement membrane?
What an actual basement membrane, I would have to specify that it's not a cellular layer, that it's the tissue in between. Yes.
I just noticed you wrote, pseudoiferous. Do we have to have pseudoiferous?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here I wrote epin pseudoiferous, you would have to put the whole thing, also for apocrine, I just didn't want to write the whole thing. Yes.
How did the acrine and apocrine secrete sweat again?
How do they secrete sweat? Like, why are they different? Acrine, what's the mode of secretion of acrine? It's merocrine secretion. Merocrine and acrine are synonymous, but I still want you to know that it's called acrine pseudoiferous and it's merocrine secretion. What is merocrine secretion? Exocytosis. So there's no damage to the cell, just vesicles full of stuff, proteins and water, liquid stuff get fused to the plasma membrane and stuff gets released out. So that's acrine pseudoiferous, merocrine secretion. Apocrine secretion? Shedding. Membrane, so the cells grow, top layer sheds. Cells grow, top layer sheds. So there is damage, but the whole cell is still intact. It's just growing and shedding, growing and shedding.
So does it just like create pressure and then it rises to the top like the skin?
So how does it actually secrete? Like, oh, is that what you meant?
Yeah.
How does it actually secrete? We briefly went over this. We didn't go over the mechanism, but just like what is there to help push it out. What's that called? Myoepithelium. Myoepithelium. Myo is a prefix for muscle. So it's specialized epithelium that can contract. Myoepithelium. Yes.
So E would be the apocrine, and then F would be.
Yeah, E is apocrine, and then F is eccrine.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Sorry, the myoepithelium contracts in secretion?
Myoepithelium contracts for all glands. Contracts for all these glands to help push stuff out. Okay, let's go to the next topic. Whatever we cover for osseous tissue, I'm hoping we're going to get to at least compact bone. We'll see. Chapter 6, osseous tissue and bone structure. So we've gone over our first system, the integumentary system, skin, hair, nails, and the glands that are involved with it. Here's a completely different system. It's on the inside of our body, covered by the skin because everything's inside. Osseous tissue and bone structure. So I hope you're all eager to learn all the different bones. We'll get to that. Before we can understand what all the bones are, we need to understand what they're made of. So we're going to look still at a cellular tissue level, what this tissue looks like, what cartilage looks like, and what bones look like. We'll eventually get to landmarks and stuff on bones, but we'll also talk about how bones are formed. We'll talk about ossification. This prefix os, os, that means bone. So if you see that prefix os, just like you see myo, that means muscle, you see the prefix os, that means bone. When I think of bone, or when you think of bone, you probably think it's just this really rigid structure, right? Something really strong, has a framework. And it can be like that. So like this building has a framework. But let's say I want to make this building bigger. Say we want an addition on our house. What do you have to do? You have to break some parts of it and then add new stuff, right? Our bones are a lot like that. They're constantly changing. Our bones are not static. Just like I've mentioned our plasma membranes of our cells, they're constantly changing. They can adapt and move and change. So can our bones. It's slower than, say, our muscle is moving, but it can still change and move and things happen to it. We are constantly remodeling our bones when needed, especially if we're growing and developing. So keep that idea in mind. That's why I have this picture up here. At a tissue level, at a cellular tissue level, our bone is a lot like how concrete is poured. When you pour a lot of concrete, if you've seen like roads being made or even buildings being made, you don't just pour concrete and that's it. You usually have these metal rebar rods. They're there for reinforcement. So if there's stress, if there's an earthquake or something, it doesn't just crack and it crumbles. This provides further reinforcement, provides a little bit of flexibility. When we think of bone, what is the common mineral that you think of? Calcium. So we'll talk about calcium phosphate, how that mineral, the concrete, provides most of the reinforcement. But we have additional reinforcement. We have protein fibers in here. So where we find the calcium phosphate, where we find the protein fibers, what's the term for all of that? The extracellular matrix. Bone is a connective tissue. Calcium phosphate and the collagen protein, we'll see, makes up the extracellular matrix. It is a connective tissue, it has an extracellular matrix. It's just not liquid, and it's not squishy. It's hard. Extracellular matrix implies that what else is in that? What else is going to be found in bone? Not fluid. Extracellular matrix will imply that cells. They're cells. They're cells. So you have your extracellular matrix, the calcium phosphate and protein, but you also have cells. So bone is a living tissue. We forget that bone is a living thing. It has blood vessels. It has nerves. It can grow and change. It's just the extracellular matrix is hard, solid. It comes compared to other extracellular matrices which are liquid or squishy. We'll also take a look at ossification. We start with a framework, and then that framework grows into bone. We'll see how that process of ossification works. So as I've been hopefully getting my point across, skeletal system changes a lot. It's dynamic. That's what dynamic means. It changes a lot. We can add to it, we can remove from it. It can heal, it can repair. Why do we need a skeleton? For support, for leverage, for framework, to protect important organs like your brain, your lungs. We need it for movement, so muscles attached to it for movement. I say that we can remove from our skeletal system because it is a storage area for calcium and for phosphate. Calcium, Ca2+, phosphate, PO4, 3-. I do want you to recognize these abbreviations. That's their chemical abbreviation. Calcium ion, phosphate ion. These two ions are found in our bone. They make up most of our bone. These ions aren't just used for your bones. The main reason why we need calcium is not for bones. It's for nerves and muscles. We'll get to that later, but for our nerves and muscles to function properly, you need calcium and phosphate. So if you had to choose, say you're low on calcium and phosphate, if you had to choose, what's more important, your neurons or your bones? Neurons. So if you're calcium deficient, you'll take calcium away from your bone and use it so that your neurons can function properly. Which is why your bones can get frail if you have calcium deficiency.
I was gonna ask, if you have too much calcium, could that produce like ossification in the bone, or like the bone to become so?
If you have too much calcium, could that cause too much ossification? Not quite. There is actually a syndrome where if you have like excessive calcium intake, that could lead to removal of calcium from your bone because your body's like, oh, you don't need it, you have enough.
Okay.
So in most cases, I mean, there are weird cases where too much calcium gets added to bone, and that's a whole completely different thing. But generally, you can't get too much calcium unless you have an excessive amount where your body thinks that you don't need it anymore, so it removes it from your bone. So that's if you have excessive levels of calcium.
So if you break a bone, will calcium, will you produce more calcium to repair the fracture?
If you break a bone, what happens with calcium in your body? So all these things that we've mentioned, how do you think they get transported around your body? Like calcium and phosphate? In the bloodstream. So let's say you break a bone, what your body will do in response to it, and we'll touch on this later, is that it'll take these ions from the blood and add them to the area that's needed. So in this case, if you break a bone, you'll want to add more of this to that area. We'll talk about that, a little bit about that process coming up, but yeah, you'll take it from your diet, which gets into your bloodstream, then gets added to your bone. Oh, one other important function of bones is that it helps produce blood cells. We'll talk about red bone marrow. Red bone marrow is the location of blood cell production. Just a reminder that bone and cartilage, this is what I mean by osseous tissues, O-S-S-E-O-U-S, osseous tissues. Bone and cartilage are connective tissues. Bone and cartilage are connective tissues. We've already talked about connective tissue proper, where you can find all those 6 that we talked about, and we'll talk about fluid ones later on. But specifically, cartilage and bone, these are the hard ones. They're the ones providing a framework. Where do you find them? And they make up your skeleton. And cartilage is found in lots of places. Cartilage is found in all your joints. Cartilage is found in the ends of your bones. Cartilage is found in your airways. Like, remember the trachea? Those rings that pop it open. Cartilage is also used as a framework for ossification. Like, let's say you want to build something, so you just put a placeholder in its place, or you have like a framework that you need to put something on top of. Cartilage can serve as that. We'll talk about that process. Yes?
It's like, get a nose job, you usually put your wing.
Oh, is that what you do? I don't actually know where to get it from. Interesting. So if you get a nose job, a rhinopectomy, you take cartilage. You can take cartilage and put it in if you want to make it bigger, I guess, longer. Because we are talking about bones, we also find other connective tissue. So bones are mostly bone, like your skeletal system is mostly bones and cartilage. But again, you have bone marrow, which is what makes blood. So you find that in your skeletal system. There's also yellow bone marrow. Yellow because fat has a yellow color. So adipose is also found in your skeletal system. You also have dense regular connective tissue. Tendons, ligaments, the things that cover bones, bone sheaths, the protective outer covering. That's also found in the skeletal system. And all of that comes from mesenchyme. All these connective tissues come from mesenchyme. Okay, before we can talk about bone, we need to talk about cartilage, because cartilage, again, it's sometimes a precursor, I shouldn't say precursor, it's sometimes a placeholder for bone, until it gets replaced by bone. So you may have heard that our bones start as cartilage. Not quite. We originally had, for some bones, bones that were just cartilage, but then that cartilage got replaced by bone, and some cartilage is left over. So why do we need cartilage? Cartilage does a lot of different things. It helps resist friction, it helps resist compression, and it can stretch a little bit. So it's a lot more flexible than bone in general. Bone is generally not too flexible. A little bit, but not very much. This prefix, chondro, that means cartilage. Where have we seen this term already? Remember the hypochondriac regions? Below the ribs, the cartilage of the ribs? Chondro means cartilage. It's chondroblasts. You've seen this term before, like fibroblasts. The term blast means it's an immature, younger cell that's building things. So chondroblasts are what are building the matrix. Chondroblasts build. They build cartilage. Cartilage, the extracellular matrix of cartilage is made of three basic, there are several other things, but three major things. Water is the main thing. If you ever jumped on a water bed or even to a pool, you know that water can resist compression. It's fairly squishy. It's good for compression and absorption of shock. Yes.
So that's what the cartilage extracellular matrix.
Yeah, the extracellular matrix of cartilage. So these are cells. In between here is mostly water. Mostly water. You'll also find, I'll finish in a second, sorry. You'll also find proteoglycans. It's a protein that helps resist compression, and also collagen. You all know what collagen is. That's all found in the extracellular matrix of cartilage. In lab, we'll talk about the specifics, and I'll let you know what the really cutoff is for the quiz. Thank you for staying an extra minute. We'll go over the slide again later. Cool. Monday, Wednesday, I'll see you in lab. Tuesday, Thursday, I'll see you tomorrow for the practical. Sorry? Classroom? Oh, go to the normal class. Wait, hold on. I don't know. Wait outside. I'm probably going to 202. We're probably going to 202. Skin models and anything related to skin, hair, and nails. And then on the cadaver, body regions, different membranes like serous, synovial, mucus, cutaneous, and the layers of skin. Epidermis, dermis, lots of histology. Study the histology. That PowerPoint, it's on. It's online. All the pictures are online. We have open lab on Friday. Check it out.
It's 30 o'clock here.
Sorry?
Today's, this week's last 30 o'clock here. 3:50.
Oh, what time are we meeting? We're meeting at 3:15. Yeah, it's later than normal.
Yeah.
I've got meetings all morning, so meeting at 3:15. Hopefully I'll be there on time. My meeting ends at 3, so I'll run over. Okay. You ready? All right. We're going to talk about osseous tissue, and the first thing we're talking about is cartilage. In general, cartilage has many properties. There are different types of cartilage, and we'll go in a second. But in general, cartilage is built by chondroblasts. Built by chondroblasts and maintained by chondrocytes. Built by chondroblasts, maintained by chondrocytes. How can you tell the difference? We weren't able to tell the difference between fibroblasts and chondrocytes. You will be able to tell the difference between chondroblasts and chondrocytes. When you look at it under the microscope, here's an example of cartilage. Chondrocytes are always surrounded by extracellular matrix. Chondrocytes are always surrounded by extracellular matrix. Let's say you're trying to build yourself a mud and straw hut. You've got all this mud and straw around you on the ground, and you want to protect yourself. So you just start taking it and building it around yourself. Kind of like nestling yourself in this space. You have space to move around once you completely build it, once you've surrounded yourself. You have space to move around, but you're completely surrounded. These cells are completely surrounded by collagen, by proteoglycans, by water. But they've left themselves a little bit of space, a little burrow. They've burrowed themselves in. So the term for the hole that they sit in, that's called a lacuna. The actual cell is inside of that lacuna. The chondrocyte is inside of the lacuna. So the hole that it sits in is called lacuna. The cell is the chondrocyte. Chondrocytes are always in lacunae. Lacunae is plural. That sounds a little problematic. You've cut yourself off from everywhere else. It's avascular, no blood vessels. Aneural, no neurons, no nervous sections. Because of that, there's limited repair. It's foreign-resisting shear forces, which means if you twist on cartilage, you can damage it. And growth of cartilage slows young adulthood, so most of us have done it by now. We don't really have growth of cartilage. So the fact that it's surrounded by all this semi-solid, kind of gummy, semi-solid extracellular matrix, it's doesn't heal well, and if you damage it, it's damaged. Where do you find chondroblasts? You find them on the outside of the major part of cartilage. So chondrocytes are lacunae, chondroblasts are lining the region. Blasts are always to the outside. The outside, the very outside, this tissue here, that's the perichondrium. It's on the perimeter of the cartilage. Perichondrium. So this is true for all cartilage. There are 3 types of cartilage, though. Any questions about cartilage in general? Okay, first type. Oh, hyaline. The term hyaline, I think it's Greek or something, means glassy. Has a extracellular matrix. There is collagen. You don't see the fibers though. It has this glassy look to it. There is collagen in there. You can't make out an individual fiber like you could with dense respirators. This is like your areolar of cartilage. It does a little bit of everything. It's good for a little bit of compression. It's good for a little bit of cushion. It is fairly flexible. It's not really flexible, it's kind of flexible. It's in between. Where do you find it? It's covering the ends of your bones. If you're a meat eater, you eat like chicken bone, you don't probably that's how it's coverage. It's there to help cushion your bone. But we'll also see how it got there in the first place. Now let's say here's a bone. Hyaline cartilage is covering the ends of bones. Approximately this length of bone. It's also found in what's called the growth plate. If you're done growing, you don't have a growth plate anymore. If you are growing, you have a region of hyaline cartilage. If you are done growing, you do have a region of hyaline cartilage. And this is an area that gets replaced. It's the area that can, where the bone will start to extend.
What is that?
This area, it's colloquially known as a growth plate. The official name is an epiphyseal plate. We'll get to that. Where do you also find it? Costal cartilage. Costal means ribs. So your ribs are bone, they're bony ribs here, but the extension, here, the extension from the bony part of your rib to the sternum, this is cartilage. Hyaline. Why is it important that this would be firm yet cushioned? So it can protect your lungs and heart, but also expand as you breathe. You want it to be firm and good. So hyaline cartilage is found there too. Second one, elastic cartilage. So hyaline cartilage has collagen. Elastic cartilage has elastic fiber. Elastic cartilage and elastic tissue are two different things. This is elastic cartilage. How can you tell the difference? Simplest thing to do to know if you're looking at cartilage or bone, always look for the lacunae. Always look for those peacocky looking circle dots in the center. Look for the, if you see these lacunae with cells in the center, the cartilage in there, you know you're looking at cartilage or bone. You see bone. That's one way to know if you're looking at elastic cartilage versus something else. Elastic cartilage, the extracellular matrix, has a lot of these elastic fibers surrounding it, and they're very visible. These fibers are very visible. They're all crisscrossing every which way, and they're dark and wavy. It has elastic fibers, it also does have collagen. So hyaline cartilage is a little bit flexible, elastic cartilage is really flexible. Find it in your ears. What's the term for ear? What's this region? Auricular or otic? I don't know. OTIC. Otic. Yeah. here, the very, very tip of your nose is elastic. Most of your nose is actually hyaline. The very tip is elastic. The epiglottis, remember the epiglottis, that flap that covered the trachea? That's elastic cartilage. You also remember that from the field day, hopefully. Auditory tube, that's a tube that extends from your ear to your throat. That's elastic cartilage. So it's flexible, really flexible. So not very supportive, but very flexible.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat the part? You said always look through the lacunae. What was that in reference to?
Yeah, so when I was saying always look for the lacunae, if you see lacunae, you know you're looking at either cartilage or bone.
Okay.
If you see lacunae, you know you're looking at cartilage or bone. Otherwise, it's some other kind of tissue. Hyaline has a glassy look. Elastic has a very dark, wavy fiber in the external matrix. Fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is the toughest of the three. So elastic is the most flexible, fibrocartilage is the toughest, hyalin's in between. You can call it fibrocartilage, you can call it fibrous cartilage, it's the same thing. I prefer fibrocartilage, I just think it sounds better. It also has mostly collagen, like hyaline cartilage. But you can see all this collagen is wavy and in the same direction. All the collagen is in the same direction. It does not have a perichondria. It does not have a perichondria. So this is especially damaging. It's not held together. It would need something else to hold it together pretty well. But because it is the most, the toughest of the three, you need this in areas where you have the highest compression, where you're holding things together. So intervertebral discs, in between your vertebrae, your bones of the spine. And you can see that from the anterior side. These intervertebral discs, this outer covering, there's stuff on the inside. This outer covering is fibrocartilage. These are your hip bones. The term for hip bone is coxal, C-O-X-A-L. These are your hip bones. The fusion of both hip bones, right here, this is the pubic symphysis. This is also fibrocartilage. So these two pubic bones fuse together, they're held together by cartilage, fibrocartilage. And then in your knees, there are these two discs in either knee called the menisci. Two discs called the menisci. They're the cushion on that weight as your knees push down into the ground. Those are also fibrocartilage. So fibrocartilage is found in three very particular places. Well, these are the major ones. These are the three major places where you find fibrocartilage. Which of these three do you think is most abundant? Hyaline. You find hyaline in most places. You find elastic tissue in very specific places, elastic cartilage, excuse me. You find elastic cartilage in very specific places, you find fibrocartilage in very specific places. Questions?
What's the term that you use for fibrocartilage? That it wasn't flexible, that it was.
Fibrocartilage isn't flexible, it's very tough, very strong, resist compression. Yeah, so hyaline cartilage most abundant. You find it in lots of places, like every single joint at the ends of most bones. You find hyaline cartilage. You find it in your ribs, you find it in your nose, lots of different places. You only find fibrocartilage at the menisci of the knees, at the pubic symphysis, and the intervertebral discs. And elastic cartilage is only places like your ear, epiglottis, shown right here. lattice and auditory tube. Hands on 3. 1, 2, 3. 3 is a letter. 1, 2, 3. B. B. It's B. Intervertebral disc is fiber cartilage. That's what would be damaged if a hernia exists. Another question? Some of the different answers. The cells sit, they're not doing anything to help resist anything. All the water, all the fibers, all the proteoglycans, those are doing things to help resist compression, resist different forces. The lacunae are just where just the home of the chondrocytes. Cool? All right, last topic. Osseous tissue. Osseous tissue also resists tension and compression, but more so than cartilage. Because the extracellular matrix is very different. You have calcium phosphate, Ca2 plus, and PO4 minus. Calcium and phosphate. It's a mineral. It's a mineral. It's inorganic. It's not a living thing. It's not made from a living thing. It's just, you get it from the earth. makes up most of the extracellular matrix. Calcium phosphate, when they're bound together, without getting too much about it, when they bind together, they form this network, this matrix, and it's very rigid. It's very solid, as well on bone speed. But just like those rebars in concrete, there's also fibers that help reinforce this hard stuff. Collagen, you all know, is a protein. Protein is something that's organic, something made from carbon, something that our cells make. And so our bone, the extracellular matrix of bone is 33% collagen. Back here we have, like in these jars are bones that have been treated in different ways. One of these was treated with acid, one of these was baked. Do you think this was acid or baked? Acid. Treated with acid. If you treat something with acid, what do you think of those two things will be affected most? Calcium phosphate or collagen? Acid affects, in this case, would affect the calcium phosphate. So you can see how disintegrated this is. It's decalcified. This is decalcified bone. You remove the calcium, it's mixed in with the acid now. So you've removed it from that nice framework, and now it's all mixed into the liquid here. These are baked bones. They're more brittle, so they're easy to break. Here's a good example of one. How would you describe this bone if you could touch it, based on how it appears? Can you see that? Can you see? It's bent. The bone's bent. It's not broken, like it's not snapped. It's bent. It's pliable. If you bake the bones, they become more pliable. They lose their integrity. You bake the bones, they become more pliable. You're affecting the collagen. So heat would affect the protein. Heat would affect the protein. That's what this is demonstrating.
Like we are doing garlic.
Sorry?
When we are doing garlic, it's the same thing, yeah? We are.
Oh, when you're cooking bones, like beef, chicken, whatever, they become more pliable. Yeah, they can become more pliable. Yeah. Or even boiling, I guess. I think about our bones. I'm not talking about it. But yeah, so that's how you can show the properties of these different extracellular matrix components. Calcium phosphate is a major one. Oyster bone is made of this mineral. But we also have collagen. Collagen is made by cells. Collagen is made by cells. We'll talk about the cells in a minute, what they're made by. Bone cells. If you had to guess what the bone cells are called, blastocytes. So we have osteoblasts. Osteoblasts that build the extracellular matrix. We have osteocytes that maintain the matrix. We can tell the difference between the two. I will let you know in a minute. And there actually is one more cell type I'll mention coming up. But there's only 2% of your bone and your skeleton is cells. So not much, but it's still living. If you break a bone, you're damaging not just this, you're also damaging living things. So that also has to heal if you fracture a bone. When you traditionally think of bone, you think of the hard stuff on the outside. That's called compact bone. But if you look on the inside of a bone, if you ever crack a bone open, if you look on the inside, you can see that it's kind of porous looking, it's spongy. There's several words for it. We can call it spongy bone, we'll just stick with that. But if you see it called something else, like spongy bone is also called compact. So spongy. It's also called cancellous or trabecular. They all mean the same thing, but I'm going to prefer spongy because it's a lot easier. No, it's not. The slides that we have, I think they say trabecular or capsules. So, you know. And that's shown here. So here's like a cross section, longitudinal section of a bone. Here's the spongy bone towards the middle, compact bone is towards the outside. And we need both. They serve different roles. You need compact bone towards the outside, you need spongy bone a little deeper. Okay. Last thing we're talking about, compact bone. How can you tell what compact bone is? Compact bone is very dense, as the name implies, very solid, and it forms walls of bones. So it's that outer portion. Because it's so dense, it's the strongest part of bone. But I should qualify that. When we look at dense regular connective tissue, what's the example where we find dense regular?
Tendons,
Where's a place where we find dense regular connective tissue?
tendons and
Not
ligaments.
organs.
Tendons and ligaments.
Tendons and ligaments. They're great resistant force in one direction, but not in the other direction. So compact bone is great at resisting force generally along the length of that bone, but not bone joints. So here you can see, here's the outside of the bone, like the very, very outside. We'll talk about this later in a minute. But all of these circular arrangements, you can see how they arrange in these columns. So they're great resisting force in this vertical direction, but not side to side. So compact bone is great at resisting force along its length. So if you have a long bone, it's great at resisting force in this direction, but not side to side. If you have to guess, what kind of bone would be good for that? It's not compact bone.
So wait, say that again?
If compact bone is not good at resisting side to side tension, what type of bone would be?
Spongy.
Spongy bone, because it's going side to side. Compact bone is great for resisting force in one direction. And generally it's up down because, gravity. The term for these circular arrangements, that's called an osteon. So when you look at bone, you'll see lots of these circular things. So here's one osteon, there's another, there's another, there's another. All those things are osteons. Within an osteon, there are more circles. This is a circle, here's a circle, here's a circle, here's a circle. This is the outermost part of the circle. Then you can see another layer, you can see another layer, you can see another layer until you get to the center. So, see cells arranged in a layer here, here. The cells are arranged in these concentric circle layers. Remember the singing corpuscles? Do you remember the other name for them? They're called lamellated. A lamella is a concentric circle layer. So these are lamellae. So this is one lamella. So this is a single lamella. The whole circular layer is a lamella. The very center of each osteon, this is where you find blood vessels and nerves, the major blood vessels and nerves. This is the central canal. These aren't living cells after all. They need blood, they need nerves to go to them. So in the central canal, this is where you find the major blood vessels and nerves. Where do you find the lacunae? With collagen, it was a lot easier to see the cell within the lacuna. With compact bone, if I point to one, it's kind of one and the same. Because here's the osteocyte, and then the lacuna is just what's around it. It's all really close together. So all these dark spots that you see that look like spiders, the dark spot here, 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 those are all the osteocytes within their lacunae. You just assume that if you remove the cell, the lacuna will be there. Osteocytes, those are the mature bone cells. We'll talk about osteoblasts in a second. Oh, got this thing. You'll also notice that these cells have little legs on them that extend outwards or inwards to different lamellae. These little things are called, they're like little canals, so they're called canaliculi. Canaliculi. The central canal is for major blood vessels and nerves. The canaliculi is so smaller blood vessels can reach those cells. These cells need to be fed. They need access to the bloodstream. So we get really small blood vessels, capillaries, leading to these cells. So you need a hole. Because bone is solid, you need holes for these blood vessels to pass through. Canaliculi are those little passageways. That's why you see these little wavy lines coming out like spokes. The central canal is going longitudinally, going along the bone. What if you want a major blood vessel to go across the bone, laterally or medially? Sometimes you'll have passageways that connect central canals. That's called a perforating canal. Perforating canal. It perforates, it goes through from one osteon to the next. On this model, this is a cross-section of bone. Central canal in the middle. You can see how if we look at the longitudinal section, the central canals go down lengthwise in the red here. But here in this cross-section, here's a perforating canal. It's going from one osteon to the next, to the next, to the next. So central canals go along the length of the bone longitudinally. Perforating canals go medially laterally. Question? There's a lot there. I know. Did you do all that? Yes. For this practical, no. For the quiz, you need to know what these things are. Practical, the cutoff is skin, hair and nails. The quiz, this is the cutoff. You know this for the quiz on Monday. The quiz. The practical, the cutoff is hair and nails. Hair, skin, nails. All right, I'm at 40x. You all see these little white spots? What do you think those are? White spots are? Lacunae. Whether it's bone or cartilage, we can still call them lacunae. It's cells sitting inside. So let's figure out if this is bone or cartilage. All right, 10x. You can see a little better. Let me, or 100x. Let me go a little closer. that you see in the extracellular matrix, one, you can see the fibers, so what does that rule out? It rules out hyaline. It's not hyaline cartilage. And it does with fibro or elastic. Would you say the fibers are going most in the same direction or all different directions? Same direction. So this is fibro cartilage. Again, you can see the white spots here. So these are the lacunae, the chondrocytes inside of that. A little closer. Is there anything in the extracellular matrix that you can see? Not really. So what is this? So here we are at 40x. You can see all the lacunae are in this middle strip. You see the different layers of fibers in between the lacunae. Where are we? What is this? This is elastic cartilage. Dark wavy fibers surround the lacunae. So here's mature compact bone. I want to caution you, if you get to the lab check today, there are slides back there that say compact bone, but they're actually developing or they look different from this. If you want a nice shot of, you want ground bone. Oh, the slide that says ground bone, it's compact bone. It's mature. It's easily visible. Okay, here you can see osteon, the central canals in the middle. Osteon. Nice and clear in this one. You can see how there are layers. What's the layer called? Lamella. So there are the lamellae. You can see the osteocytes and the lacunae in that lamellar arrangement. You've got a bunch here and here and here. All kind of like an orbit around the central canal. And then those tiny little black lines that are going in and out of the lamellae, those are the cantilever lines. I don't think I saw any perforating canals on this one. You'd have to find like a good cut. Find a perforating canal. Like this might be the beginning of one, but it's not the right level of getting a perforating canal. So you might not see a perforating canal. You have to get the right slide.
Are canaliculi visible up there too?
Are canaliculi visible? Yeah, they're visible. They're the tiny little black lines extending from each.
Okay. From each cell?
From each
Osteocyte.
osteocyte / lacuna space.
Okay.
This is compact bone, osseous tissue, compact bone, specifically compact bone. There's a bunch of bone over there. Questions? Okay. Yeah. So again, that is the cutoff for lab check. No, quiz. But the practical only covers till till, yeah, Megan, hair and nails, events. Here's what we're gonna do. Let's, if you need to take a break, take a break, but we're gonna continue working on activity 4. You can finish it today, that would, like, here in class, that would be ideal, because you can throw your ideas around me and see if you're on the right track. But otherwise, I'll accept it by the end of today, so just email it and upload the cameras. I will be, in about like 15 minutes, I'll be sending groups back